Every single person struggles with something. There are things that scare us, things are humiliating to us, and things that just eat at us constantly.
In our final episode of God of the Underdogs, we're going to learn the first step to letting go of those things so we can grow closer to God.
Welcome everyone to Hope Church Online. My name is James and I'm Hope's Digital Media Director.
And I'm Nathan. I'm the Worship Programming Director here at Hope Church. Now we're at the end of a series called God of the Underdogs. And this has been a great series for everybody to connect to because we all have underdog moments when we need God to step into our lives and help us out.
Yeah, if you're new to the channel and you've never seen any of these episodes yet, don't worry. You'll get a great recap before the message starts, but we would encourage you to go back and check them out if you have time this week or maybe even next week because it's a long series. This is episode 6. So we're really excited that you are here. Also, if you're new, we would love to connect with you, get to know you better, and tell you a little bit about Hope Church. And it's super simple. All you have to do is text the word new to the number right here on the screen. That way we can reach out to you later this week. Plus, we have a free, no obligation gift that we'd love to send you. This gift is just a thank you for spending about, how much time?
Well, it's a pre-recorded message we have here. We're together about 40 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, so that's a long time out of your week, so we're just really grateful that you could be with us. Also, if you are returning to the channel, we would love to connect with you as well. So if you could like and comment, and if you have not already subscribed, we would be so thankful. But if you comment, I do promise to respond to every single one. So go ahead and just tell us where you're watching from, if there's something from today's message that really stuck out to you, or just tell us what topping does not belong on pizza, because we asked this on Facebook a couple weeks ago, and we didn't get a lot of responses. So now I'm curious to bring this over to a new platform and tell us what doesn't belong on your pizza.
Interesting.
Personally, I'm going to say it right now, pineapple.
No, don't go there.
Pineapple, 100%.
So delicious.
So good.
Anyway, we are so glad that you're here to enjoy God of the Underdogs with us. We're going to jump to the message now, but don't go anywhere. After the message, James and I will be right back with you.
See you soon.
Good morning, everyone in the room. Good morning to all of those who are watching online. As Jason said, my name is Sean. I'm one of the pastors here on staff at Hope Church, and it's great having Jason back, isn't it? I mean, it's just awesome to see him, and it's very dangerous to give him a microphone and a stage after being gone for 3 months. I thought maybe I'd get about 10 minutes for my message this morning, but it looks like I'll have my usual time, hour, 2 hours, and we'll go from there. But if you're new, thanks for being here. If you're new watching us online, please know that we have chat hosts who are here to answer any questions you have, to welcome you to Hope Church as we now finish up the God of the Underdog series. It's kind of hard to believe that this is week 6, and we've been journeying through these Old Testament figures, specifically the prophet Elijah and the prophet Elisha, as they've encountered underdogs in their messaging, but also experienced being an underdog themselves. And today, it's really neat because we're going to cap off this series with an underdog that some of you may be familiar with, others may not, but a man who goes on a journey, an adventure of kind of discovery, of healing, understanding, a type of self-reflection, but an amazing story that I think and know you're really going to like. And we're actually going to be back in the second book of Kings. So last week, Pastor Zach, who's our group's pastor, he was talking about the prophet Elisha, and we're going to be in that second book of Kings as well. And this is something that I've said twice, so this will be the third time I've said it in the course of this series. If you're brand new to reading Scripture or brand new to just understanding a little bit about faith, and you've kind of been maybe a little hesitant to open up the Old Testament because you've thought, yeah, I don't know, that might just be a little bit too much for me being new, I'd highly recommend 1 Kings and 2 Kings as a great place to start, because that's where we've been in this series, is the prophet Elijah and the prophet Elisha, and they're found in those books. In the stories of themselves and the underdogs are things that you can relate to, things that make sense, things that are applicable to your life. So check those out. If you're even if you've known the Bible for a while, but you're like, I haven't really looked at 1st or 2nd Kings, could be an excellent place to kind of begin maybe a practice of studying Scripture and reading about people. And I think you'll find that it makes sense for your life in some way. And I know that the figure we're going to look at today is going to be someone that you can relate to and that you can understand. But before we jump into the second book of Kings and looking at this individual, I want to talk about quests or adventures. See, I love great adventure stories, whether it's in the form of a book or a movie, and I thought it'd be fun to just list some of the quest and adventure stories that are my favorites as I would begin this kind of discussion of this figure we're going to look at. So I created a list, and I'm going to show you what I have right now. You may agree with them, you may not, but the first one, we're going highway to the danger zone, crank up Kenny Loggins. We have Top Gun. That should be coming up. Oh, is my TV not on? I thought I hit it, sorry. So everybody, Top Gun. It should be coming up on the screen, but that's the first one, first adventure, quest, journey. That's my favorite. How about this one? Shrek. People like Shrek, definitely a journey, adventure story. This one you're going to find just inconceivable. Inconceivable. The Princess Bride, obviously a journey, a story of adventure, discovery, true love. Okay, here's one for you that you may not have expected. Dumb and Dumber. Okay, yeah, Dumb and Dumber, I mean, it's a chance to find love, and it doesn't necessarily work out, but it's my message, and I get to pick the movies and stories that I like, and if you have an issue with it, you can email me at jason.ewert@hopelakecountry.com. Okay, and then here, this is the last one, and this is great. We're going back, highway to the danger zone, Kenny Loggins. We have Top Gun Maverick, okay? So these are some of mine that I picked out. Take your pick of whatever it might be. And you'll notice that as you look at these types of stories, these movies that you encounter, there's a pattern, there's a theme that make up the plot elements of a quest. And the first part of this, and we're going to let's just use Top Gun as a story. You'll get it, even if you haven't seen Top Gun, you'll understand what I'm talking about. The first part of any quest story, good quest story, is the call. So this is where Tom Cruise, who plays Maverick, he is invited to go to Top Gun, which is the school for learning about dogfighting and fighter jets. So he has the invitation to go. He's picked and chosen to go to school there. And then you have what's next is the journey. And the journey is, in any quest story, it's kind of the road you take. You fight battles along the way. For Top Gun, Maverick, Tom Cruise, this is kind of learning and showing off in school and learning the skills necessary to be this type of pilot. But of course, there's always an element that comes next, and that's arrival and frustration, right? Their hero encounters a difficult patch, and they're faced with their own weaknesses. I think in looking at Top Gun, it would be probably where Goose, his wingman, his buddy, dies, and he's faced with having to get past that moment and trust somebody else to be with him in the cockpit and to continue on. The next part of a quest story is the final ordeals. This is the battle with the dragon in the movie Top Gun. This is when he goes up against the MiG fighter pilots in this incredible scene, and what happens? The good guys win, right? The goal is the last thing that you would see, and everyone lives happily ever after, and there's success and cheering, and these elements make up a typical quest story, whether it's one of the ones that I listed before or your own that you might have in mind, and they make us feel good. We get excited about them, we enjoy watching them or reading them, but they're not really like real life, right? I mean, sure, a lot of us go through these parts of our life, and many of us, maybe a lot of you in the room, those who are watching online, we reach goals, and we complete these steps of a journey, but I think for a lot of people, we stop at different areas. I think people who suffer from addictions, whether that's drugs or alcohol or pornography or gambling, and they feel a call. They know I need to change something with my life, and they start a journey, but something happens, a frustration occurs, and they might stop, and they may never finish this quest for healing. I think about people who have had very difficult relationships, people who things started off wonderfully in a marriage, and then things changed. They changed, or their spouse changed, and they tried counseling, and they've tried talking to other people, and the journey just didn't end the way they wanted to. It wasn't a we live happily ever after. It ended in a divorce. Or people who struggled with work and employment, or they expected to get a promotion, and they had the call of what they should do in life. They journeyed, they went through the arrival and frustrations, but then maybe it was the final ordeal. It was a big presentation, or something happened, and it didn't end up working out. I think of a lot of students who study and do a lot of extracurricular activities because they want to get into a certain university of their choice, and they follow this plot, these steps, and they get that rejection letter, and it's devastating for them because they followed everything they were supposed to do. They followed every part of the process, and life didn't answer in the way that they wanted. In the past 2 weeks, I've been to funerals for two people who have passed away from cancer in the middle stages of life, way too early. And I imagine their spouses and their children and their siblings and their friends who have walked with those people through that journey of trying to heal from cancer. And it hasn't turned out how they would have hoped. Even though that person's gone, they're frustrated. And this goal that maybe they had hoped for was never achieved. Maybe some of you are facing that right now in your own life with an illness. Someone just texted me this morning for prayers for a mental illness that they've been battling and struggling with for many years. People know that, those online. When you're sick, when you're hurt, it doesn't always lead to happily ever after. It doesn't always have the good guys winning in the end. And that's kind of the tension that we feel with a journey and those many moments in our life as we walk along. And this is kind of the intro to the character that I want to walk through today with all of you who are joining us in the second book of Kings, about a man who was looking for healing, was looking for a change in his life and his path, and a Perhaps the healing that he expected and wanted came in a different way, and something that he learned along the way. So if you're ready, if you're set, we'll jump right into it. I think you're going to enjoy this passage. But I said we're in the second book of Kings, and we'll go right into it. We're in chapter 5, verse 1. Now Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. The king of Aram is the king of Syria. So we all know. So Naaman is the commander of the army for the king of Syria. And Syria was a major influence in the world at this time, in the ancient world. Massive army, massive land, massive power. So think of that when you think of Syria. Naaman was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram, to the Syrians. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. So Naaman is this incredible general, this incredible commander. If you could imagine right now, I'm not even sure if I could name it, whoever would be the leading commander of the American military forces, or just think of a general from the history of the United States who would command absolute respect, power, obviously name recognition, somebody who, when he said something, or an individual with power says something, like, you do it, because it's coming from them. So that's Naaman. This is who we have, we're presenting. And Naaman, though, has a little bit of a problem. He has leprosy. Here in our society, in the Western world, we don't have to deal with leprosy. Leprosy is a skin ailment. It actually still exists, but in the ancient world, it would have been seen as something that would have been frightening for other people. It actually made your skin appear almost like you were dead, and if you looked dead, that means you had no life of God in you, whether you were someone from Israel who believed in one God, or if you were a pagan and you believed maybe in a lot of different gods. It wasn't good. So here's our character. Here's our person, Naaman. And what I want to think about and have you see and know, and those who are listening, those online, is that sometimes the people who have the most power, the people who are great, they suffer with something that's humiliating, something that's not good, something that they want to get rid of. And it's not just kind of, the underdogs, it's also the people that we look up to and might respect. And that's Naaman in this story. He has this incredible influence, and he's very well respected, but he's battling leprosy. We'll continue on. Now, bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So here's the situation. This young girl from Israel is a captive. She was taken in a raid that probably Naaman was part of, and now she is in the household of Naaman's wife, and she serves them. And she says to Naaman's wife, "Hey, if only your husband would go to see the prophet, he could be healed. He could be cured of this leprosy." I want you to just kind of put this in perspective of who this servant girl is. She's a nobody. She's a slave, and a slave in the ancient world had no standing, no voice, no respect, and especially if you were a female slave, you had nothing. I mean, essentially you were at the lowest of the low. That's how it was. And she says this comment to Naaman's wife, and you can imagine how that conversation may have looked when Naaman comes home from training the army, and he says, "Oh, you heard from our slave girl that I should go see this prophet?" It's kind of like nobody tells Naaman to do anything, but she's the voice, she's the call in this journey. This is the start of Naaman's adventure, you might say, or quest. So, as we look and we find out exactly what that means for Naaman, we see that that's kind of a humbling moment. When someone says that to you of here's something that you might need to do and travel and experience, It's not necessarily what you'd expect from someone who's a slave coming out of your household. And that's kind of the first fill in the blank that we have today, is that healing is humbling. It's a humbling moment when perhaps somebody you don't expect or somebody who you might find insignificant offer a piece of advice that maybe starts you on your journey, on that call. Think about maybe some of you experience this, or someone watching online, of someone saying, "Hey, I think you might have a problem with alcohol, or you might have a problem with drugs even." And it comes from an unlikely source, and it's a humbling moment when someone says that, or whatever it is. You just haven't been acting like yourself lately. Is everything all right? And that's that first kind of push, that first call that maybe something needs to change. We're going to continue on with Naaman's humbleness as we move to this next verse. So Naaman went to his master. His master is the king of Syria, and told him what the girl from Israel had said. "By all means go," the king of Aram replied. "I will send a letter to the king of Israel." And so Naaman, he left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing, quite a lot. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so that you may cure him of his leprosy." Another humbling moment for Naaman. He has to go to his boss, the king of Syria, and basically say, I have this illness that I need healed, and I need to go to this other country in order to make it happen. Have you ever had to tell someone about something in your life that you've struggled with? About something that you needed to change? Maybe it was a spouse, maybe it was a boss, and say, "Hey, I'm not doing okay. I need to go on a journey to figure this out, or to change something in my life." It's very humbling. So Naaman goes, right? He takes the stuff with him, and he's going to go see the king of Israel. And we move on to the next verse. As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." What does he mean when he says pick a quarrel with me? Well, what he's saying is that here's Naaman, who's the king and commander of the Syrian army, and he comes down to Israel, which is this insignificant little kingdom, and he has an audience with the king there. The king of Israel had to be very suspicious about what was going on. Is he spying on me? Are they going to come to conquer my kingdom? It would be like the biggest army in the world coming to visit just a small, insignificant kingdom, and the commander of that army has an audience with the leader of that small territory. You'd probably be a little bit suspicious, a little bit worried about what was happening in this situation. That's why he says, "Have you come to pick a quarrel with me?" But it's also humbling, right? Because he has to tell this king of another land, "Yeah, I'm looking for this prophet because I have an issue and I need to be healed from it." So here's the prophet Elijah. He's going to jump in here. When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message: "Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." And so continuing on. So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." Let's see how Naaman responds. But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy." So this is another very kind of humbling moment. You have the commander of the Syrian army come to the house of the prophet Elisha, and the prophet just sends a messenger to give him information. He doesn't even actually come out and greet him himself. He's like, yeah, just send my messenger. He'll give him the information. He can go on his way. Naaman's not used to that. He has people who wait on him, who obey every word that he says. And when he came to see the prophet, he was expecting him to come out, wave his hand over him, and everything would be fine. And Naaman is not happy, right? Here's the next line. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? So he turned and went off in a rage. Arrival and frustration, right? I thought it would be different. I thought the prophet would do this. I thought things would just have gone the way I expected and the way perhaps I demanded. A ton of pride. It'd be like us going to Illinois and someone saying, if you just wash in the lakes of Illinois, you'll be fine. We'll say, there's beautiful lakes in Wisconsin, not these fake lakes in Illinois. Why do I have to come all the way down here, right? No, I mean, he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it, and he's annoyed. And that's the frustration that we have, right, when we're on our own journeys. I thought I was going to get into this university or this college. It should have happened. I did everything that I was supposed to do, and this is how it should have turned out. I shouldn't be sick from cancer because I lived a healthy life, and I ate well, and I exercised. And I don't have any of this in my family history. It should have been different. It should have not happened this way. Or my marriage shouldn't have fallen apart because we did everything right. We did everything right, and then something happened. Or I shouldn't be in this financial situation because I planned and I prepared and I worked hard. Things should have gone different for me. We felt that before, right? We've experienced it. Some of you are angry about something right now. You're frustrated because it didn't go the way you wanted. And for Naaman, it's not going the way he wants. You know, he just wants to show up and arrive and be cured and get back to his kingdom because in the next couple of weeks he'll probably be taking over the land of Israel anyway. He just wants an easy, quick journey. But then Naaman's friends jump in. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed?" So sometimes we just need that push, right, over the goal line. And a lot of times friends are the ones who help us through, family as well, when we're struggling, when we're trying to understand something that hasn't gone our way. We need that influence. And that's why healing of any kind, whether it's a relationship you're healing from, whether it's something personal you're going through, something you want to change in your life, healing is very frustrating. It doesn't make sense to us. And sometimes we wonder why we have to do things that are so incredible to reach the next level. And sometimes we find ourselves having to do really nothing. It's not an ordeal at all. Here's an example without too much nudging. At least 3 times a week, when I do something to get in trouble and my wife's upset with me, she says, "I just want you to say you're sorry." Right? Like, you don't have to do some great thing. You don't have to fulfill some incredible quest. I just want you to say, "I'm sorry." And you get frustrated by that and think, that's all? That's it? Yeah, just say you're sorry. You kind of feel like Naaman in those moments because you say, "I thought I was going to have to do some great thing." And his friends say, "No, just do what he says. Simple. Just trust." And so moving on, so he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. And the next passage says, "Then Naaman and all his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, 'Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. And if you think about this moment, it's very significant. It's very critical because Naaman is more than just healed. He meets God face to face. He sees the God of Israel at work right there. The healing he wanted is different from the healing that perhaps he needed. And that's where God kind of steps in and shows him the way and shows him the path to come to. And that's kind of the journey for all of us, right? That we find that sometimes what we really need is different from what we want to happen, what we want to occur. And that's, a lesson that we all have and need to understand as we move through life and as we take these challenges that exist. And that's the next fill in the blank for us as you look at your message notes, that what we receive means more than what we achieve. And for Naaman, that meant that the gift of seeing God face to face was more important than achieving some incredible quest. It meant that he could understand and see for the first time what the God of love could do in his life and what it meant for his future. And think about that in your own lives, right? When you're on a quest for whatever you're looking for, a healing or understanding. Think of those times maybe when you haven't even finished the goal or the ordeal has come through, and you've said, maybe what I've received in this moment is more important than what I've achieved. And the realization that comes from it, and what you found and experienced. So here's a question for you. What person in this story didn't get what they wanted? Anyone have an idea? There's one person in this story of Naaman who didn't get what they wanted. Slave girl. The slave girl who was taken from Israel. And why do I say that? Well, because she was the one who had the most to be angry and upset about. She was the one who should have gotten something because of her suffering and pain. She was the one who had every reason to be upset. Most likely her family was taken and killed by Naaman's army. Most likely she would end up the rest of her life in that situation. And yet, she was the one who offered a path to healing for Naaman. She was the one who said, maybe it's better to love my enemy more than try to destroy him. That's amazing because it's ultimately the quest and the journey of understanding the path to one of the underdogs that probably we connect to, that we do connect to everything that's happened in this series, Jesus himself. The one who said we need to love our enemies. We need to maybe put somebody else's needs above our own. That we need to be there for others when it hurts. And maybe my own journey is not fulfilled. And when we look at this slave, this girl who had this moment of realization, we see a suffering servant. And we're connected with the ultimate suffering servant, Jesus himself, who forgave his enemies, who loved until the end, who went to the cross for us, who did deserve to have everything that he wanted and needed, and instead chose the path of forgiveness and truth and grace. So for us, what does that mean as people who are people of faith? Well, I think the quest of the Christian life is the one that's the most difficult, isn't it? I mean, maybe there's some people here or those who are watching online who are just at the call phase. They don't know anything about Jesus and what that relationship might look like, but they are feeling something stirring within them. Or maybe there's people here, I know I've been there, who are at frustration. Like, nothing seems to ever be going my way with faith, religion. I just really want Jesus to come through or God to come through, and it's not happening. And I don't know why. A lot of us are just on the journey, trying to figure things out one step at a time. But the quest, the goal, what we're seeking is that face-to-face meeting like Naaman had with God and the prophet, to have a changed heart, to have a changed relationship, to see things in a different way. And that's, I guess, what I'm encouraging all of you is that we have these many journeys that we experience in life, and they don't always have the happily ever after ending, but we do have one main journey, and that's the Christian life, where there's ups and downs and trials. But we don't have to do anything to achieve victory, because it's already been won for us by Jesus. It's already been given to us. It's already been sacrificed for us. We learn as we go along. We find out ways of becoming more like Jesus, whether it's the slave girl and forgiving an enemy, or learning the path of kindness, or the path of self-understanding and closeness with God. And that's what has been won. That's what has been achieved already. And we don't have to do anything more to do it. We just receive it and walk that path, that relationship with Jesus. There's one last scripture passage I wanted to bring up about how we enter into these journeys in different ways and different forms. And I think Jesus' brother James, when he wrote a letter to the Christian community, said it best when he said, "Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up." I think that humbleness is exemplified in the underdog of the slave girl, in knowing that the Lord's going to lift us up in our troubles, our weaknesses, our journey, and that he's going to be the one to guide us as we move forward. And that's the passage I want you to think about as we transition now into the next part of this service, where the band's going to come out and they're going to play some songs, and there's some questions that are going to be up on the screen for you to see, and it's going to be about a journey you might be on. It's going to be asking what you're experiencing, and maybe to humbly see how your answer might be something you need more than what you want. And if you're watching us online, those questions are going to be provided by the people in the chat for you to reflect on and follow along with. So we're going to pray, and then the band will be out for those songs and reflection. So take the time to think about this message and journeys and maybe different stages you're on as you fulfill that path. Lord, thank you for Sundays. Thank you for the gift of church and gathering and walking a path with you that can be very humbling, very frustrating, and not always go the way we expect or would like. But in the midst of that, we find underdogs who have changed the course of the world with their love and dedication and just small little victories. And we ask, as we listen to this music, as we reflect on our journeys, that you continue to guide us and strengthen us as we journey closer to you and one day see you face to face. We make this prayer through Jesus our Lord. Amen.
What a great way to wrap such a long series. For me, I really enjoyed when he brought up James 4:10 that says, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up, because that brought me back to the first point of healing is humbling.
Yeah, because healing can be so humbling, absolutely. I mean, no matter what you're struggling with, whether it's addiction or fear or anger, whatever you might be going through, it can be a hard first step, like to step in and ask God or to ask someone for help. But it can be such a beautiful thing to see God step into our situations and even use our struggles to help us grow closer to Him.
Yeah, I'm a recovering addict, and so 7 years ago, I told to God that I was gonna, become a pastor, and I was gonna really start following Him. And to keep a long story short, I had this wrestling moment with Him where I kept saying, like, I could continue to live my old life, but just on days where I wasn't active at the church. And essentially God came to me and He said, you can't be a drunk pastor. You're not going to be able to fulfill the things that you need. And so I had to humble myself in that moment to realize that God was not only saving me in that moment, but He was also prepared to use me to reach others. And so it's not a season that I ever wanted to go through, but at the same time, it's one that I would never, ask God to take away from me, because I wouldn't be where I'm at now.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to go through a season of struggle, but what a time of growth that can be for sure. There can be some really incredible, great outcomes from that.
Yeah, we want everyone that's watching to know that you are not alone. We would love to be walking through these things with you. And there's so many ways for you to connect with us here. Down in the description is a link to our prayer card. That way you can connect with our prayer and care team. You can always find us on social media at Hope Lake Country. We are active all week long on Facebook and Instagram, so you can always send us a DM. We would love to pray with you through that, or if you just want to talk more about questions that you have about your faith, or maybe you just want answers like, where should I start reading my Bible? We'd love to connect with you and help you take those first couple of steps.
Yeah, and maybe you live in the Lake Country area and you're looking for a place to go for some in-person church services. We're here on Sunday mornings at 8:30 and 10:15. We've got Hope Kids going for your kids to be able to go learn about God on their level, while you go to the adult services and get to connect with God on your level. So we would love for you to come on out and come worship together.
Yeah, last week the entire message was everything is better together. So I love our online experience, the live service that we have on Sunday mornings at 8:30 right here on YouTube, because we have a growing online community, but we also have chat hosts that are ready to connect and engage with you. So actually the service itself starts at 8:30, but we go live at 8:25. So you can come hang out with me and our other chat hosts right at that time, and have fun in the comments and enjoy watching this guy and his incredible team just do the great work that they do week in and week out.
Yeah, for sure. We do have great teams here at Hope. I love it. That's all that James and I have for you today. Next week, we're going to dive into a brand new series called Follow. Can't wait to start that with you.
Yep, so enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next episode.